I spent a lot of time, and you can relate to this, in my head. I was
Mhm.
afraid to be in the body. I was afraid to be in my heart. I was afraid to open up. And I kept thinking I kept picking emotional, unavailable men. But really, the mirror for me in looking at the relationships was I was emotionally unavailable to me.
What if the best chapter of your life hasn't even begun yet? What lies within you is the power to live brighter, bolder, and truer than ever before. So welcome to Vivatude, where caregiving, connections, and career come into balance, and where your vitality, vision, and voice shines through. Because the revolution isn't out there, it's already within you. Welcome to Vivatude.
And we're back on Vivatude. Today, my guest is Brenda Reiss. We are talking about forgiveness and what that means on an energetic level, really diving deep. Brenda, in the last segment, you talked about how you had this awareness that life wasn't happening to you, it was happening for you. And that opened up some doors of consciousness. Can you take us down that path of your journey?
Absolutely. Being introduced to the concept of this radical forgiveness was really mind changing, heart changing, life changing because of the fact that, like I said, I was noticing that some of the patterns were still there. So as I was discovering more about myself, I was doing different internal work, shadow work, all the things. But I kept noticing that every time I saw a Metro bus, I would just break down. And finally, I realized, oh, that's because my ex husband was a Metro bus driver.
Wow.
So I was still clinging on, I was still attached to this relationship, this story, even though I kept trying to move on. And he was definitely moving on. I was still having some issues with it. So that's where I really was asking for help, right? It's like, okay, wait a minute. I really wanted to be able to go forward in life with more relationships. I didn't want to be alone. I'm divorced. And, I'm in my late 40s and I'm going, okay, I'm still young. I got life. But however, I'm noticing that there's something tugging at me. There's still something, even though I'm trying to like date, it's not working. And so that's where the radical forgiveness came in. And in the concepts or the assumptions of radical forgiveness is I'm a spiritual being having a spiritual experience in a human body. Okay, I could grasp that. It's like I like that. And then it was the fact of maybe life happens for you, not to you. What? What do you mean about that? Hold on. No, no, no. Things happened to me, right? And what I grew to learn was that yes, things happen to us in life, but it's what I do with them. It's how I come through them. It's what the after part is. That's what's for me. So, yes, we all go through, like I've gone through different abuses through my life. And I could stay the victim or in victim consciousness, like I like to say. And I know some people don't like those words, but that's what I related to. I was like, oh, wait, if I'm blaming someone else, I'm putting all my energy out there. I'm not bringing anything in here for me. I'm giving it all away. So that's where this concept of, wait a minute, happens for me because in the radical forgiveness process, it gave me a 5-step process. So I say, so I can move from my head to my heart. Because as I learned, I spent a lot of time, and you can relate to this, in my head. I was
Mhm.
afraid to be in the body. I was afraid to be in my heart. I was afraid to open up. And I kept thinking I kept picking emotional, unavailable men. But really, the mirror for me in looking at the relationships was I was emotionally unavailable to me.
Wow. That is very deep. That is very deep. I don't know how much you can get into the sense of some of those steps and how it shifted your worldview, because now I know that you help thousands of women
Mhm.
through this process, and you've been doing it for many years. So yes, I'd love to hear more. What was it about that? And how did you shift from victim into having more of a sense of power and personal responsibility?
Well, going through the process is what helped me, right? Because the creator of radical forgiveness was also a hypnotherapist, also an energy healer. So he really combined the love of all of that to create this very tangible work. So it's not only energetic, but it's tangible. And so what I mean by that is it takes you through these 5 steps. And that's what helped me. The first couple steps are about I can tell my victim story and I'm going to tell it to a coach or to someone that will hear me so I can be witnessed and validated. Then the biggest part about this is also feeling the feelings. I didn't allow myself to fully feel the feelings. A lot of people don't, as I find with my clients. But really holding a space and holding the container for that. But what really shifted for me was separating fact from interpretation. The fact of my story was that I'm divorced. It didn't work out. My husband had an affair and we couldn't reconcile. The interpretation was, oh, he loves somebody more than me. Somebody's better than me. They're skinnier, they're cuter, they're more beautiful. There's something wrong with me. That's the suffering. When I could take that and then go into this other stage, which is the reframe, and reframe everything of what my life was about that led me to who I am today, when I could reframe that to a higher perspective, like maybe this was for me. What did I learn from it? Where's the gift? How can I help women today go through this, right? This is what I learned through this process was like, wait a minute, let me shift how I'm looking at the lens. That's the beauty of radical forgiveness because maybe we were in this dance together. And what have I learned from it? And how am I going to move forward from it?
Yeah. That is when we really get into the soulful, emotional, and spiritual work. This is so deep, and it's interesting you mentioned, yeah, the late Colin Tipping was
Yes.
the founder, and I actually met Colin back in the day, and
Nice.
yes,
Yeah,
really
I
profound
was
work.
trained by him. So yeah, it was really good.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and now you are advancing this work through your own practice. So you were personally transformed. Let's finish up the rest of your story and how you brought that now into what you're doing. And then in the next segment, I want to invite you to share some practical tips with our listeners on how they can begin to think about this for themselves.
Well, so like I like to say, and I think people can relate to this, for years, I was the dependable one, I was the fixer, I was the one who could handle anything, but underneath I was exhausted, I was resentful, and I really wasn't sure of who I really was. And that third divorce became the mirror, a wake-up call. It's the pain, what I say, it's the pain that cracked me open. I realized then that I had been abandoning myself for approval, I was avoiding conflict at the cost of my own truth. And that's what really helped me to realize that I needed to come home to myself.
I think that is such a common story for women. Maybe it's just our culture. I don't know. But I think so many of us are raised to put our own needs aside in the interest of helping others. And so that sounds so profound.
Well, it is. And I do want to say something too. I keep saying coming home to yourself. And I want to actually define that for a second, if you don't mind. And that is remembering who we are beneath the roles and the expectations and really the emotional weight we've carried for years, because it's about reclaiming our voice, our needs, and our joy. That's what coming home to ourself means, and that's what forgiveness can give us.
So powerful. Well, I hope that this has been inspiring, Brenda's story. And we're going to come back in a few minutes and talk about the nuts and bolts. So what can people actually do to begin to have this internal shift from the roles that we play and the ways that we abandon ourselves into more of a sense of connectedness with who we really are? This is Lauren Archer with Vivatude. My guest today is Brenda Reiss. We'll be right back.
And thanks for listening to Vivatude. 4 hosts, one each week. We help you revivitude your next chapter because purpose, passion, and prosperity isn't out there. They're already within you. Brighter, bolder, truer. Vivatude.